Good day, this is chapter 6, the ancient philosopher one, the triumvirate.
Triumvirate. The word triumvirate refers to the three philosophers. They are the fathers of philosophy, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The ancient Greek philosophy reached its height at the hands of these erudite philosophers. Philosophy has been profoundly adapted, even acclaimed by some a merely footnote to their tenet. In Socrates was known to be the greatest teacher in Athens. He believed that the best way to improve the moral and social condition of the people is through education. Know thyself, this is the sum of all his philosophy. The first lesson which self-knowledge teaches is our own ignorance. True knowledge of evil is ignorance. So, to solve this problem, man must know his knowledge inside him in order to able to evaluate his strength and weaknesses to be able to live a good life. So, in terms of man and virtue, since knowledge is inborn, virtue is likewise natural endowment which is not necessarily be acquired in formal education. Hence, virtue may be taught, but this does not mean to introduce something new into the mind, but rather as a merrily awakening or recalling the seeds of knowledge that perhaps have lied dormant. So, as a philosopher, he give attention to inner life, which is the groundwork of human soul, the foundation of knowing to lead a responsible activity. So, but Socrates himself cannot define exactly what the soul is. Yet, he believes that it brings knowledge, it eventually influences or directs how one should lead daily life. So, good life is not merely discernment on life, but on how it must live by people. In Plato was born in Athens some years after the beginning of the Peloponnesian War. The exact year of his birth is unknown, but the year 427 to 428 BC is the most probable date. Plato was originally called Aristocles, Platon being a nickname given by his masters in gymnastics on account of his broad build. Plato's main thesis is the society will be orderly if only justice will prevail. Injustice for him is competitive in the acquisition of wealth and honor that lead him to discriminate his fellow men.
Morality and socio-political thoughts. Like Socrates, his teacher Plato puts forward the Socratic notion of knowledge is virtue. He likewise emphasized that knowing the good in human will deliberately lead to conduct a good life, a life of happiness which must be found often a virtuous quality of life. Hence, forgetfulness to those virtues, the tendency is vice. In Plato's political theory, it is closely associated with his moral thoughts. In the Republic, he described that society states a congregation of the three classes and resemblance to his concept of soul, having three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. And the reason as the awareness of knowledge of a virtue, spirit, which is drives human to action as response to the direction of the reason, and finally, the appetite on the bodily desire. This is so because the soul is the principle of life and religion. The notion of the soul derives the three major types of people. In the in the states, this stage reflects the human body. For Plato, the society is composed of three but distinct parts which is assumes different function. On the other hand, the spirit is manifested with a courageous and individual society who, who tend to protect the people and maintain order to enable them to achieve their social goals. Finally, the appetite describes the common people, artisan, who are the perceived to have a greater or representation in the community. In addition, his social classes theory is simplified in the following manner. Men of courage are the warriors who value honor, unself- Unselfishly, they give their service in duty to protect the state from internal and external enemies as well from the citizen who violate the rules. They serve to unfold order, justice and peace in the community. Artisan, or the general masses obliged to obey the rules of the states, they are the working classes to engage and trades in manufacturing for the material needs in society. Each of the social classes expected to do their tax to contribute and share of benefits and well-being of the society. The justice will realize the generated and greatest good that every society aspire.
So on the state, justice is the generally virtue of the state, unless the state is led by the rightful and truly philosopher which acquired political authority, and with the sort of divine intervention, evil of justice will forever prevail. Justice in the state can be achieved provided the three social classes fulfill their rules. The philosopher, king, man of wisdom, as expected, should lead with the highest level of knowledge and moral principle. So the guardians, men of the courage, on their part must continually manifest the virtue of courage in the defending the state against aggression and social evils. Finally, the common people artisans must also possess the required virtue such as wisdom, courage, and temperance. Since society is the made up of individuals, it is imperative that these virtues are observed by everyone to achieve social goals. So, as regard to his preferred state, Plato clearly believed that all states have a government system which leads to the decline of the ideal state. Aristocracy, where submission of all classes is explicit, but these states will not stand firm, for it will decline into democracy, which gives more emphasis on protecting the honor of the ruling class on the common good. This this paves way to system of private property where riches and wealth become the main concern of the leader, called plutocracy. But plutocracy is a problematic state according to the Plato because it tends to break the unity of the people and harbor instead conflict between the rich and the poor. So to resolve for a better image, it leads to democracy that reflects the principle of equality and freedom.
On philosopher, kings, Plato believed that in ideal states embodying the highest and best capabilities of human social lifetime can really be achieved if the right people are put in charge. Since the key is the success of the whole is the wisdom of the rules who make decision. For the entire city, Plato held at a perfect society will occur only when kings become a philosopher and philosophers are made kings in the Republic Act 473. More significantly, he argues that are the best rules must always in someone who knows how to rule, someone who understands ruling as a craft. But since craft, any sort invariably aim to produce some internal goal, good practitioners or each craft always act for the sake at the goal or never their own interest alone. They good rules like good shepherds must to do what is the best for those who have been entrusted to do rather seeking their own welfare.
In Aristotle was born in Stagera, a seaport town of the colony of Chalcidice in Macedonia in the year 384 BC. When he was 18 years old, Aristotle went to Athens, where for 20 years he followed the lecturer of Plato. In the year 343, he was summoned by Philip of Macedon to become the tutor of Alexander, who was then in his 13th year. The influence which he exercised on the mind of the future conqueror is described in Plutarch's Alexander. When Alexander departed on his Asiatic campaign, Aristotle returned to the Athens. For the first time, he opened a school of philosophy, He taught in a gymnasium and called it the Lyceum, discoursing with his favorite pupils while strolling up and down the shaded walks around the gymnasium of Apollo. Hence the name Peripatetics from Peripateo, Zeller in the year 1897.
On the good life, Aristotle's moral thoughts support that having a good life is not simply being good, but to achieve a fulfill our distinctive and human being. Like a farmer, that person is good as long as she fulfills his function as a farm products producer. In society, we are designed to various functions that have to be realized respectively by each individuals. The basic of morality, therefore, is to discover our social function for the different facets of society, then fulfilling this function effectively. This is so because morality is embedded in human nature. Meanwhile, as a human, action to aim their proper and happiness is also essential outcome upon fulfillment of those human function. Happiness turns out to be end good of human action, but this happiness shall as well be the result of virtuous life. Thus life of virtue is the manifestation and habitat fulfillment a good human action. Social morality therefore is the constant fulfillment of the integral roles of people in community, such as right choice, right behavior, right tracking, etc., which is to act accordance to right reason. In addition, moral life is well consisted of the cultivation of good habitats that would lead us to take in the middle course of action golden man, which is simply avoiding bad conduct. Instead, humans should practice the virtues of the generosity, good temper, friendship, and self-respect.
So in supreme good, the supreme good of man is happiness. Of this no Greek had the less doubt. The word eudaimonia has however more of the objective meaning than our word happiness. It is more akin to well-being or welfare. But how is this well-being to be attained? What is that constitute happiness? So, happiness is determined by the end for which individual is made. And the end of human existence is that form of good which is peculiar to people, the good which is proper to a ration being. Now, reason is the prerogative of human. It should, therefore, the aim of people existent to live conformably to reason, to live of virtue. Aristotle would not include wealth and pleasure from the idea of human happiness, for wealth is necessary for the external manifestation of virtue, and pleasure is the natural reward of virtuous life. So happiness is also includes friendship, health, to sum up all the gifts of fortune.
On state and political life, Aristotle starts with the principle that man is by nature a social being and is forced to depend on the social organization. For the attainment of happiness, man's social life begins in the family, for the family is prior to the state. The state is consequently bound to keep the family intact and the general its mission is the advancement and development of its subject. The lifting of the people by the just administration of law, a higher plane, and moral conduct. For Aristotle, the basic function of the state is a intricate man from the crude natural condition in which he find himself. Thus the goal of the state is simply good living or the good life. The state came into a being to meet the basic necessarily of men and ensure to security well-being of its member to be able to live of, on his ethical life. However, to achieve this ethical life, one must promote and maintain moderation as a mode of life.
So, lastly, included classes. Women, children, and the slave are excluded because they are considered inferior members of society. So, Aristotle regarded as slavery as the natural and therefore condone it. Slaves for him are individuals who by natural disposition, lacking intellectual acumen, prefer to obey rather than to command, to follow rather than think for himself. His complement the master prefer to think that act for himself. The two compose a fine team in which happiness of each augmented if they work harmoniously in their respective natural roles. Children, on the other hand, should be provided with proper education in virtue, which enables them to become responsible citizens whose concern will be for the common good rather for